Welcome to the Element Show. The music of Santana kicking off this hour, this half hour of the Element Show. Oh my goodness. You got to change your evil ways, baby. Without no further ado, I have a young lady. We met a couple years back, right?
Well, actually, no. You told me you heard about my organization.
Yes, because I had a flyer. I got a flyer.
An event I had.
And it's a unique organization, right?
Well, it's an organization. It's called Socks for Tots. And
give it up for who?
Socks for Tots.
And the name. And the name.
Laverne Sparrow.
Give me Laverne Sparrow a big hand, everybody. Now you got to tell us about this Socks for Tots.
Well, yeah, Socks for Tots. When you hear the name, you naturally think that it's selling socks or anything like that. But there's a theme behind it. Actually, what I do, I provide services for homeless families and domestic violence victims. And what I do, I go to the shelter. And the reason I've chose Socks for Tots because the thing about socks warm the body. Mm-hmm. So it's to warm the heart of the homeless families and domestic violence victims. And what I do, I provide every year a coat drive, a Thanksgiving feast. I also do Dress for Success for the homeless residents. I come in with career builders, people that go over resume writing, to do powerful resume writing, interviewing skills. I also provide motivational speakers, of which these were women who came out of the shelter that actually come back and speak to the women and inspire them about not giving up in life and not being hopeless. And the reason I do this is I started this organization in 2007, and the reason I started this because I grew up in Harlem, and years ago I lived in a community not far from here where as a community we work together as a family. And I just felt like so often we live in a community, there's situations going on, and we wait for other people to come in our community to make a difference. And I felt like, you know what, I can make a difference. I can't solve world problems, I can't solve a whole lot of different things, but I can make a difference one life at a time. And that's when I started doing
one at a time, right?
One person at a time. And so when I looked at the statistics of homelessness and domestic violence victims, I mean, I was alarmed. And the fact that I lived in a neighborhood where there were so many homeless shelters around me. And I felt like, you know what, it started out really thinking about the children and how I can help the children. That's why I said Socks for Tots. But then I realized in order for the children to do well, I've got to help the parents. And I said, you know what, these children need to look at their parents as their modern day heroes, because in actuality, when you go into a homeless shelter situations, a lot of my clients are domestic violence victims. And so a lot of these parents had to move from different boroughs, different states, because they were running away from situations. And so when I looked at that, I said, you know what, these children need to look at their parents as heroes. And it was amazing that when I went into the homeless shelter and I started talking to a lot of these parents.
The parents is the parents are the first heroes, not a ball player or a rapper or nothing like that. They're not heroes.
Right.
Sorry, folks, they're not.
Right.
But the parents are the first heroes.
Right.
Yes.
And so one of the things I realized as I went to the homeless shelter with all the volunteers that I have, because that's all I have is a lot of volunteers, and I say thank God for that. And I start listening to the stories of some of the parents. And it was just, I tell you, it was shattering to hear the things that they've gone through. But the most important thing to me, as I looked at them, they were still standing. And I told them, you know, because you're still standing, that
means something.
That means a lot. And so what I started doing is tapping into that whole part of hope. And when I started speaking to them about being hopeful and knowing that this is not the end of your story, this is just a part of your story. And so we started talking about having hope and having vision about your life. And I brought people in that were in situations like that. And as we started ministering to them in a way where we kind of talked to them about how you are the hero. And it was amazing, even saying that and coming in there with my volunteers and saying that I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of you. Some of the women would gather around me and start crying. And that touched my heart in a way because they said, no one has ever said that to me before. And so when I started going in there, I said, but you are the heroes in your families nowadays. So what I started doing is bringing them, like I said, my Dress for Success program, because a lot of the residents now, in order for them to get an apartment, they have to have jobs.
Yeah.
And now that there's been so many laws passed with homelessness and everything else, it's extremely hard for them to get these apartments. And then if you know anything about
I want to say this, and I knew someone personally, I won't mention the name on the air, I know him personally. In fact, they had to move out of the state. Because they have one of these programs in New York City, whereas that the city will pay the rent and they pay this, and recently they cut it out.
They cut it out.
They cut it out, and I mean,
absolutely.
I mean, the person who I knew, well, they had to skip town.
Yeah. It is extremely hard for them now, but the thing is, even they are so resilient. I mean, the thing is, they realize as you speak to them, they begin to tap into a force that's inside of them that they didn't even know that was there. And I say this because I have a woman that I met in she's one of my domestic violence clients. A young woman. She was like 21 years old when I met her. She's now one of my motivational speakers. And so she came out of a homeless. She had 3 children. She started coming to church. She started talking about God and really believing in her mind, because everything starts with the mind, that she can change her life. So she made a vision board. And she said, you know what, all the things I've gone through in life, and I know that if I'm here today, that I can accomplish everything on this vision board. Now I say this today, I'm so proud of her, because she's like my daughter, really, she is. She's accomplished everything on that vision board. From getting a driver's license, and that's something we take for granted, but that was a huge thing for her. Yeah. To get a driver's license, she's now a married woman 3 years later. She has her car, she has her home. Now she's in a home where she's renting, but she's still in a home. This is on her vision board.
She got home, yeah.
But the thing is, it just helped me.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Mm-hmm. One has to have some kind of vision.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't have a vision, they say if you don't have a vision, the people perish or wherever they're going.
People perish, exactly. And even today, she's one of my motivational speakers. She was actually speaking at a school that I'm doing a program with homeless children in a school system. They have like 40 children in this school, so I'm starting a tutoring program, but they wanted her to come and speak to the parents about vision. So she's there today actually as we speak. She was speaking to some of the parents earlier this morning, because she believes that she can overcome, because you know what, there's no obstacle that's too big. And those are the things that Socks for Tots, we go into these homeless shelters and we try to empower these families to believe that, you know what, this is not the end of life. So we provide the clothing, the coats every January. We do the slightly used coats. We do the business attire. We bring clothes throughout the year. We have a Christmas toy drive. We have a big Thanksgiving feast. I'm having a big event on June 23rd at one of my largest shelters. And it's a woman appreciation, mom's appreciation. We're going to have motivational speakers. I have some of my teen volunteers that's coming out doing poetry. We're going to do Dress for Success. We're doing makeovers for the women. And this is also, and not even just women, because some of my domestic violence clients are now men. So when I go into some of the shelters, the last event I had for Dress for Success, it was a few men there. We bought suits in, and I had my resume writers come in, and one of the guys put on a jacket, and he walked around the facility. He was bopping for the first time. They said, wow, look at him. He felt like, wow, this feels good.
And he felt, I'm going to tell you this, even, like, if a person, no matter male or female, how much of the time we knock these jobs, but if you don't have a job,
right,
things stop all. I talked to my son. Me and my son talked. And I said, one thing for sure. I said, well, if a person loses their job today or tomorrow, well, I hate to say they can't communicate with anybody no more, because the cell phone going off.
Everything goes off.
Everything goes off because everything's tied to that. It may not be that much, but everything's tied to that buck.
Exactly.
And that job.
And that job. That's so
how
true.
You get these volunteers, these people, they motivate.
Well,
how you get a
lot of my volunteers comes out of my ministry. I have a lot, and some of them are my best friends, because they knew that this is such a passion of mine, that I love doing it. And so it's amazing when you have something like this, because I truly believe people do want to give back, but sometimes they don't have the forum in which they can give back. And because this is something that's already established, I have volunteers all the time. They come out, they cook for me, they serve. I have the teen in my teen ministry. They come out, they serve food, they sing songs, they do poetry.
Maybe we could get, I'm not putting anybody on the spot. We have a young lady you probably met, Miss Arnold. Maybe Miss Arnold could come there and do it and volunteer. She's a powerful motivational speaker.
But the thing,
I'm just saying, and random,
But we all can make a difference. I believe wholeheartedly that God put us here to make a difference. I do that.
And to help each other,
and
too.
to help each other. And it doesn't matter whether it's in my organization or whatever town or city you live in, there's always a situation. And statistically, even when I look at the domestic violence victim, over 936,000 women, and we're just talking about women, not even men, are victims of a heinous crime. 25% of them are domestic violence victims. And so that's just the people that we know about, that's on record. And so when you look at that, they said out of all the women that's plagued with domestic violence, 50% of them lose their job because emotionally and physically they can't work. Right. So when you think about these situations, it affects all of our bottom line. It affects our school teachers and Fortune 500 companies. So it affects
it hits their bottom line.
It hits everybody's bottom line because these people are working. There are neighbors that's next door. They're people that we work with, people that we see all the time. Let me tell you, I'll walk the street and if I see a woman that looks distressed, I will always talk to her. Yeah. Because you never know what situation people in, but you never know how God can use you to change that situation around. Yes. And so I tell people, you know what? I can't solve the world's problem. No. I can't solve world hunger. But I pray every day that God will use my life in a way that I can make a difference in somebody's life, one person at a time, one soul at a time.
On that note, I'd like to thank you so much for joining, and we would like for you to come back in a future date. Yes. Also, too, if you can't bring that motivational speaker you told us about.
I will, definitely. I will. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really
I would love to have you. Tots for Tots, Miss Sparrow. And we're coming back with more of elements. Take it out.